The first sign wasn't the seating chart. It was the way the bride avoided my eyes. At my son's wedding, I was dressed in navy blue, the color he said reminded him of home. I arrived early, like mothers do, carrying calm and lipstick and the quiet pride of someone who had paid for everything but asked for nothing. The venue was beautiful. The band was tuning instruments. The bar was being stocked with bottles I had chosen myself. I smiled. I didn't yet know where they planned to put me. A young woman with a clipboard approached. She was polite in the way people are when they don't want questions. "Ma'am," she said, "we'll have you seated back here." She gestured toward a narrow door behind the main hall. "The kitchen?" I thought it was a mistake. "Excuse me?" I asked gently. She checked her paper. "Mother of the groom," she confirmed. "Yes, you'll be comfortable there. It's quieter. Quieter. That word again. Inside the kitchen there was a folding chair. One. No table. No view. Just stainless steel counters and the smell of roasted meat. I looked down at my shoes and felt something settle in my chest, not pain, not anger. Understanding. I paid for the venue. I paid for the band. I paid for the open bar, the imported flowers, the custom cake my son had loved in the tasting. I paid for the day my son would remember for the rest of his life. And I was seated where the dishes would pile up. My son passed the doorway once. Our eyes met. He hesitated. Then he smiled tight, apologetic, and kept walking. I returned the smile. I stayed quiet. People assume silence means surrender. They are wrong. I sat on that folding chair and listened to laughter spill through the walls. I heard glasses clink, music start, the opening notes of the band I had hired. I took a breath, and then I took out my phone. There are moments when a lifetime of being the bigger person crystallizes into a single, precise decision. This was mine. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't stand up and make a scene. I made 3 calls. The first was to the band manager. "Hi," I said calmly. "This is Margaret Hale. I'm the one who signed the contract." Pause. "Yes," he said. "Of course. I need to cancel," I continued. "Effective immediately." Silence. "I understand the timing," I added. "Please refer to clause 12. I'll cover the fee." Another pause. "Understood," he said. The second call was to the bar service. "I need you to stop serving alcohol," I said. "Now." Confusion. Then recognition. "Yes," I repeated. "I'm authorizing it." The third call was to the florist. "I won't be needing the centerpieces brought out," I said. "Please keep them." I put my phone away and folded my hands in my lap. My heart was steady, because this wasn't revenge. It was correction. Through the kitchen door, the music cut out mid-song. Laughter stuttered. Someone clapped, unsure why the sound had stopped. I stood up from the folding chair, straightened my jacket, and waited. The silence reached the hall before anyone understood it. At first, people laughed awkwardly, assuming it was a technical issue. Someone clapped off-beat, trying to keep the mood afloat. The band members exchanged looks, hands hovering over instruments that suddenly felt useless. Then the bar lights dimmed. Glasses stopped moving. A server whispered something to another, eyes wide. Confusion rippled outward like a dropped plate. What happened to the music? Is this part of the program? Why isn't anyone serving drinks? I remained in the kitchen, standing now, my hands resting lightly on the counter. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips, steady and calm. Years of keeping my voice even had trained my body for moments like this. The bride noticed first. She turned sharply toward the stage, then toward the bar, then finally toward the kitchen door, toward me. Her smile cracked. She crossed the room quickly, heels sharp against the floor, veil swaying like something fragile and expensive. "What's going on?" she hissed as she reached the doorway. I didn't answer immediately. I let her wait. "I believe," I said at last, "the celebration has been adjusted." Her eyes flicked to the folding chair behind me. Then back to my face. "You can't do this," she said. "People are watching." "Yes," I replied gently. "They are." My son appeared behind her. His face had gone pale in the way it used to when he was a boy and realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't undo. "Mom," he said quietly, "what's happening?" I looked at him, the child I'd stayed up with during fevers, the teenager whose tuition I'd paid without complaint, the man whose wedding I had financed down to the last napkin. "I'm sitting where I was told to sit," I said. "In the kitchen?" He swallowed. "That was a mistake," he said quickly. "We can move you. I'll fix it." I shook my head. "No," I replied. "I'm finished being moved." Behind him, guests had begun to murmur openly. Phones were out. Someone laughed nervously again, louder this time, trying to stitch the moment back together. The bride's voice sharpened. "Why is the band gone?" she demanded. I met her eyes. "Because I canceled them." Her mouth opened, closed. "You? What?" "I canceled the band," I repeated calmly. "And the bar, and the flowers." She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. "You paid for them," she said finally, as if that explained everything. "Yes," I replied. "I did." The implication landed between us, heavy and undeniable. My son stepped closer. "You're embarrassing us," he whispered. I leaned in just enough for him to hear me clearly. "You seated me in the kitchen," I said. "You did that long before I embarrassed anyone." The bride laughed a sharp, brittle sound. "This is petty," she said. "You're ruining my wedding." "It's held my hill." "I paid for your wedding," I corrected. "I'm simply choosing how much of it continues." For the first time, she looked uncertain, not angry, afraid. Because money, like silence, is invisible only until it's gone. From the hall came a voice, one of the older guests. "Is everything all right?" someone asked. The question echoed. I stepped forward, out of the kitchen, into the doorway where everyone could see me. I smiled. "Everything is exactly where it was placed," I said. And that was when people began to understand. The room didn't explode. It tilted, like a ship realizing too late that weight had been shifted to the wrong side. People whispered first. Not about me, about why. Is this part of the program? Did the band break a contract? Why is the bar closed? No one likes a mystery at a celebration they dressed up for. The bride's mother approached me with a practiced smile, the kind meant to soothe donors and silence problems. "Margaret," she said warmly, touching my arm without permission. "There's been a misunderstanding." I nodded. "There has." She lowered her voice. "We can move your seat. Front row." "Of course. Front row. Now." "I'm comfortable," I replied. Her smile stiffened. "Well," she said, "people are getting uncomfortable." I looked around the room, at the guests standing awkwardly, at the staff frozen, unsure who they answered to, at my son, who couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Yes," I said, "they are." The bride's father joined us, clearing his throat. "This is supposed to be a joyful day," he said, tone firm. "Let's not make it about seating." I turned to him calmly. "It wasn't about seating," I replied. "It was about placement." He frowned. "I don't follow." I gestured gently toward the kitchen door behind me. "That's where I was placed," I said. "Out of sight. Out of mind." A murmur passed through the group. Someone gasped softly. Another guest leaned in, suddenly interested. My son finally spoke. "Mom," he said, voice shaking. "Please, let's talk privately." I shook my head. "No," I replied. "We've done private. This decision was public." The bride's voice cut through the room. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's being dramatic." I looked at her. "Dramatic would have been crying," I said. "Dramatic would have been screaming." I paused. "This is administrative." Laughter broke out short, surprised, uncertain. Not everyone, but enough. The wedding planner rushed over, flustered. "I just need to know," she whispered urgently. "Who has final authorization?" I met her eyes. "I do." She nodded once and stepped back. That single gesture told the room everything it needed to know. The bride's face flushed. "You're enjoying this," she accused. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said. "I'm correcting something." She took a step toward me. My son moved instinctively between us. "Stop," he said to her, not to me. That hurt more than I expected, but it also clarified things beautifully. I took a breath. "I will restore the band," I said clearly, so the nearby guests could hear. "And the bar." A ripple of relief moved through the room. "But," I continued, "only after my seat is restored." Silence. "Next to my son," I finished. "At the family table. In the room." The bride stared at my son. He hesitated. That hesitation cost him something he won't get back. Then he nodded. "Yes," he said. "Of course." The wedding planner moved immediately. Chairs scraped. Place cards shifted. A space was cleared. I didn't rush. I walked slowly. Dignity is not hurried. As I took my seat beside my son, I leaned in and said softly, "You will remember this day forever," I told him. "So will I." Behind us, the band began to tune again. The bar lights flickered back on. The celebration resumed, slightly crooked, slightly changed. But something had already broken, and something else had been restored. The ceremony resumed, but the air had changed. Music played again, polite, careful. The bar reopened, though the glasses clinked with less confidence than before. People sat down as if returning to a theater after an unexpected intermission, unsure whether the show was still the same. It wasn't. I sat beside my son at the family table. He avoided my eyes. The bride sat on his other side, spine straight, smile fixed too tightly in place. She leaned toward him, whispered something sharp and fast, then smiled wider when a photographer passed. I recognized that smile. It was the one people wear when they're losing control. The officiant began speaking about unity, about families joining, about honor and respect. The words floated above us like decorations, beautiful, untethered. When it came time for speeches, the bride stood first. She took the microphone with confidence, shoulders back, voice warm. "I just want to say how grateful I am," she began, "to everyone who helped make today possible." Applause followed. She paused just long enough to choose her next words carefully. "And to those who may have felt overlooked," she continued, eyes flicking toward me for half a second, "I hope we can all remember that weddings are stressful, and sometimes decisions are made quickly." A ripple of awkward laughter. I felt my son stiffen beside me. She smiled again. That was her mistake. Because in that moment, she didn't apologize. She minimized. She reframed disrespect as accident. And she did it publicly. I didn't interrupt. I waited. Years of boardrooms and budgets had taught me something important. If someone is digging, don't take the shovel away. When she finished, applause came again, thinner this time. Then the microphone passed to my son. He stood slowly. He cleared his throat. "I wasn't going to speak," he said, "but I need to." The room quieted. "I owe my mother an apology," he continued, voice tight. "Not later. Now." The bride turned to him sharply. "She didn't just help today," he said. "She made today possible, and we failed to honor that." A hush fell over the tables. "I let someone else decide where she belonged," he said, "and I was wrong." He looked at me then. For the first time all evening, really looked. "I'm sorry, Mom." The bride's smile finally broke. Just for a second. Enough for people to notice. Enough for phones to come up again, not recording, just remembering. I nodded once. Acceptance doesn't need a speech. The officiant cleared his throat and moved things along. But the damage, or the truth, had already been done. As the ceremony ended and guests rose, the bride leaned toward me. Her voice was low. "You didn't have to humiliate me," she said. I met her eyes calmly. "You did that yourself," I replied. "I only stopped hiding it." She straightened, lips pressed thin. "You think you won," she said. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "I think you learned." She turned away. The rest of the evening unfolded carefully. Too carefully. People laughed, but checked their volume. Conversations avoided certain subjects. The joy returned in pieces, not as a whole. At one point, the bride's aunt approached me. "I don't know what happened," she said quietly, "but I'm glad you're here." I smiled. "So am I." Later, as the cake was cut, one I had chosen, one my son loved, the bride glanced at me again. Not with anger, with calculation. She was already deciding what story she would tell after tonight, what parts she would keep, what parts she would bury. I took a sip of champagne and decided something of my own. This wedding would end in peace, but the truth wouldn't end here. The reception began the way people pretend nothing has happened. Music up, laughter louder than necessary. Champagne poured like a reset button. But eyes lingered on me now. Not with pity, with curiosity. I noticed who noticed. The groom's aunt who squeezed my hand and said nothing. The photographer who made sure I was in every family shot after that. The wedding planner who kept checking with me before making changes. Respect has a sound. It's quiet but unmistakable. The bride's parents approached together. They moved like a united front, polite but tense. "Margaret," her mother said, "may we speak with you?" We stepped aside. "I want to apologize," she said carefully, "for how things were handled earlier." I waited. Her father cleared his throat. "This shouldn't have happened," he added. "You were treated poorly." There it was. Not dramatic. Not defensive. Clear. "I appreciate that," I replied. "And," her mother continued, "we want you to know we didn't approve that seating." I believed her, which told me everything else I needed to know. Back at the table, my son sat straighter. Less boy, more man. He leaned in. "I didn't know how to stop it," he whispered. "But I should have." "Yes," I said. "You should have." He nodded. Accountability hurts before it heals. Later, when gifts were announced, the bride's maid of honor took the microphone. She smiled brightly. "And now," she said, "a very special gift from the groom's mother." Applause followed. I hadn't planned this moment, but I didn't avoid it either. I stood. Slowly. The room quieted. "I gave my gift earlier," I said calmly. "You're standing in it." Laughter rippled, confused, then understanding. "The venue," I continued. "The band, the bar, the flowers, all gifts." I paused. "But gifts come from respect," I added, "not obligation." Silence fell again. "I'm happy to celebrate my son," I said, turning toward him. "I'm happy to welcome a new family member." I looked at the bride. "But I won't finance being erased." You could feel the shift. Not anger, gravity. "I hope today is the start of something better," I finished. "But better starts with honesty." I sat down. Applause came hesitant at first, then real. The bride didn't clap. She stared at the table, calculating. After dinner, she approached me alone. "I didn't realize it mattered so much," she said. I tilted my head. "Then you weren't paying attention," I replied. Her eyes hardened. "So what now?" she asked. "Now?" The word of negotiation. "Now," I said. "We see who remembers this tomorrow." She scoffed lightly. "And if I don't?" I smiled. "Then today was expensive," I replied. She walked away without another word. As the night wore on, guests relaxed again. The tension softened, but something permanent had been installed beneath the music. Boundaries. My son danced with me near the end of the night. Awkwardly, earnestly. "I'm glad you stayed," he said, So am I replied. But staying isn't the same as accepting. He nodded. He was learning. As I left, the wedding planner caught up to me. You handled that beautifully, she said. I smiled. I handled it accurately. Because generosity without respect is not kindness. It's erasure. And tonight, I had corrected that. The wedding ended the way many do. Sparklers, hugs, promises spoken too loudly and remembered too vaguely. But consequences don't leave with the guests. They follow you home. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was my son. Not frantic. Not angry. Careful. Can we talk? He asked. Of course, I said. We met for coffee halfway between our houses. The same place where I'd helped him choose colleges years earlier. He arrived early this time. That was new. She's upset, he said after a long pause. I assumed, I replied. She feels judged, he continued, like everyone was watching her. I stirred my coffee slowly. Everyone was watching, I said. That's what happens when you make public choices. He nodded, staring into his cup. She says you embarrassed her on purpose. I looked at him. Did I lie? I asked. He shook his head. Then embarrassment was a side effect, I said. Not the goal. He exhaled. She wants to talk about boundaries, he said carefully. I smiled faintly. That's encouraging. Her boundaries, he clarified quickly. With you. There it was. What kind? I asked. I hesitated. She doesn't want you involved financially anymore, he said. No holidays, no trips, no help. I waited. And, I prompted, and she wants it to be mutual, he added. So there's no resentment. I set my cup down. Tell her I agree, I said. He looked up, startled. You do? Yes, I replied. Completely. His shoulders relaxed, then tensed again. But, he said, she also thinks maybe you should apologize. For the timing. I held his gaze. For being seated in a kitchen? I asked. For correcting it quietly? For refusing to pretend? He didn't answer. I won't apologize for existing in the room, I said. If that's the condition, then the boundary stands. That night, I received a message from the bride. Not a call, a message. I think we got off on the wrong foot, it read. I'm willing to move forward if we clear the air. Clear the air. The phrase people use when they want reset without repair. I replied once, I'm open to respect, not revision. She didn't respond. Weeks passed. The honeymoon photos went up online. Smiles, beaches, captions about forever. I liked none of them. I wasn't punishing. I was adjusting. Then came the first holiday invitation. Thanksgiving. Neutral ground. Her parents' house. My son asked gently, Would you come? Yes, I said. If I'm welcome. He paused. You are? I nodded. Then I'll be there. At Thanksgiving, things were polite. Topolite. She passed the salt without looking at me. I thanked her anyway. She nodded stiffly. But something was different. She didn't control the room. Her parents didn't defer. And my son checked in with me quietly, respectfully. Progress is often awkward. As dessert was served, her mother leaned over. I'm glad you came, she said. It matters. I smiled. It does. On the drive home, my son called. She didn't say it, he said, but she noticed. Good, I replied. Because here's what people misunderstand. I didn't cancel the band to make noise. I canceled it to teach rhythm. That respect has a tempo. Miss it, and everything falls apart. I wasn't done deciding what my future involvement would cost, but I knew one thing for certain now. It would never again cost me my place in the room. Boundaries hold until someone tests them, and someone always does. It happened in the most ordinary way. A phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. My son sounded hesitant, the way he used to, before asking for help with tuition or rent. "Mom," he said, "I wanted to ask you something, but I don't want it to be awkward." I closed my book. "Then say it carefully," I replied. There was a pause. "Well," he began, "we're thinking about buying a house." I waited. "In this market, it's tough," he continued, "and the down payment is a lot." There it was, not spoken yet, but hovering. "And?" I asked gently. He exhaled. "We were wondering if you might be willing to help. Just this once. Just this once." The phrase that builds habits. Before I could answer, another voice joined the call. The bride. "I don't mean to intrude," she said quickly, which meant she absolutely did. "But we wouldn't ask if we weren't serious about building our future." Our future. The one that apparently didn't include my seat in the room. I leaned back in my chair. "I thought we agreed on financial boundaries," I said. Silence. Then she spoke again, more carefully this time. "This is different," she said. "This is an investment, in family." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "No," I replied. "This is a test." My son jumped in. "She doesn't mean it like that," he said quickly. "We just thought." "You thought the rules had changed," I said calmly. Another pause. "I didn't cancel the band because I wanted attention," I continued. "I did it because I was treated like furniture." Neither of them spoke. "I won't fund a future where I'm optional," I said. "And I won't pretend money fixes respect." The line stayed quiet for a long time. Then my son said softly, "So, that's a no." "Yes," I replied. "That's a no." The bride sighed, audibly frustrated. "I thought we were moving forward," she said. "We are," I replied. "Forward doesn't mean back to old habits." She spoke again, sharper now. "You know, most parents want to help their children." I didn't raise my voice. "I did help," I said, "until I was hidden." That ended the conversation. Not with anger, with clarity. The next few weeks were distant. Messages shorter, invitations more formal. They were recalibrating, learning the cost of independence they'd asked for. Then something unexpected happened. My son came alone one evening. No warning, no agenda. Just him. "I didn't handle things well," he said as we sat at my table. "At the wedding. Before it. After it." I listened. "I let her lead because it was easier," he continued. "But easy isn't the same as right." I nodded. "That realization usually comes with a price," I said. He swallowed. "I think we're paying it now." He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for solutions. He asked something else. "Do you still want me in your life?" he asked quietly. I reached across the table and took his hand. "I never stopped," I said. "I just stopped disappearing for you." His eyes filled. He squeezed my hand once. When he left that night, I felt something settle. Not victory. Alignment. The bride didn't call, but she sent a message 2 days later. "I'm trying to understand your boundaries," it read, "even if I don't like them." I replied simply, "Understanding is an agreement. It's a start." That night, I reviewed my accounts, updated my plans, not out of spite, out of self-respect, because money speaks, but only if you let it. And this time, I was the one deciding what it said. The crisis didn't announce itself. It arrived disguised as inconvenience. It was my son who called first, not for money. That alone told me something was wrong. "She's in the hospital," he said. "It's not serious, but it's not nothing." I waited. "She collapsed at work," he continued. "Stress, exhaustion, they're keeping her overnight." I closed my eyes. This wasn't victory. This was life reminding us that control is an illusion. "I'm on my way," I said. He hesitated. "She doesn't know I'm calling you." "I'm not coming for her," I replied. "I'm coming for you." The hospital waiting room was bright and unforgiving. Plastic chairs, muted televisions, families pretending not to watch one another. My son sat, hunched forward, hands clasped. He looked smaller than I remembered. "She keeps pushing herself," he said quietly, "trying to prove something." "To whom?" I asked. He didn't answer. An hour later, the doctor came out. "She'll be fine," he said, "but she needs rest, boundaries, support." Boundaries. The word followed us everywhere now. When the bride was wheeled past us later, pale but alert, her eyes found mine immediately. Surprise. Then something else. Not anger. Recognition. I nodded once. She nodded back. No words. None were needed. Outside, my son spoke first. "She doesn't want you to feel obligated," he said. I smiled faintly. "I'm not obligated," I replied. "I'm present." The next morning, she asked to see me. Alone. My son waited in the hallway. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly when I sat down, without fighting. I listened. "I was so focused on proving I belonged," she continued, voice thin. "As a wife, as an adult, as someone in control." She swallowed. "I thought if I put you somewhere else, I'd finally be enough." I let the words settle. Then I spoke. "You don't build belonging by removing others," I said. "You build it by standing next to them." She nodded slowly. "I was wrong," she said. "Not I'm sorry, but close. Closer than before." "I don't expect forgiveness," she added quickly. "Good," I replied. "Expect honesty instead." She looked at me then, really looked. "Will you still be part of our lives?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. This wasn't a wedding hallway. This was real. "Yes," I said finally. "If I'm never placed where I don't belong again." She nodded. "Agreed." We left the hospital separately. No hugs. No declarations. But something fundamental had shifted. That evening, my son called. "She told me everything," he said. "About the kitchen. About the seating. About the money." I smiled softly. "That saves me the trouble," I replied. Weeks passed. Slowly, carefully. They didn't ask for help. They didn't hint. They adjusted. And I watched, not suspiciously, attentively, because reconciliation isn't a moment. It's a pattern. The wedding photos arrived in the mail one afternoon. I was in many of them, centered, present, unhidden. I placed one on the shelf, not as proof, as a reminder. No one gets to decide my worth based on convenience. No one gets to seat me out of sight. And no celebration, no matter how expensive, is worth erasing yourself for. Time did what it always does. It revealed patterns. Months passed after the wedding, and something subtle but important changed. No one asked me to help out casually anymore. No one assumed my wallet was an extension of their plans. Invitations came with details and choice. That told me more than apologies ever could. My son called regularly, not to ask, to talk about work, about learning how to disagree without disappearing, about the strange relief of not owing anyone silence. The bride changed too, not dramatically, deliberately. She stopped performing respect and started practicing it. She asked questions instead of making decisions. She paused before speaking for others. She included me without spectacle, in small ways that mattered. At Thanksgiving, there was a place card with my name. At the family table, no explanations, no glances to see if I noticed. I did. During dessert, she said something that stayed with me. "I used to think generosity meant control," she said quietly, to no one in particular. "Now I think it means trust." I met her eyes and nodded once. That was enough. I redefined generosity for myself that year. Not as funding, not as fixing, not as smoothing over discomfort, but as presence with conditions. I gave time when it was respected, advice when it was asked for, support when it didn't erase me. And when it didn't meet those standards, I gave distance. Distance, I learned, is also a gift. The bride's parents invited me to lunch one afternoon. Just me. They thanked me for the wedding, yes, but more for what came after. You changed the tone, her mother said. You didn't punish. You clarified. I smiled. Clarity lasts longer. On the anniversary of the wedding, my son asked if I'd like to join them for dinner. I'd love to, I said. Where? At our place, he replied. We'll cook. They did. The food wasn't perfect. The conversation was. As I left that night, the bride walked me to the door. I still cringe when I think about the kitchen, she admitted. Good, I said gently. Memory keeps us honest. She smiled this time without calculation. I went home and pulled out the contract from the venue. The one with my name on every line. I didn't regret paying for that day. I regretted almost paying for my own erasure. The wedding finally became what it should have been all along. Not a performance. A beginning with terms. I don't regret canceling the band. I don't regret stopping the bar. And I certainly don't regret refusing to stay quiet in a room where I was deliberately placed out of sight. People ask that sometimes carefully, as if the question itself might offend me. Do you wish you'd handled it differently? I always answer the same way. No, I wish I'd learned sooner. For most of my life, I believed dignity was something you protected by not causing discomfort. I believed love meant adapting. That generosity meant disappearing a little at a time so others could shine. I was wrong. What that wedding taught me, what the kitchen chair clarified with brutal precision, is this. If your presence can be hidden, your absence will eventually be requested. I didn't cancel services to punish a bride. I canceled them to interrupt a pattern. A pattern where my money spoke louder than my humanity. A pattern where gratitude was assumed and respect was optional. The truth is, the wedding didn't fall apart when the music stopped. It recalibrated. And so did our family. My son learned that silence has a cost. Not just to the person who is silenced, but to the one who allows it. He learned that adulthood isn't choosing peace at any price. It's choosing integrity, even when it's inconvenient. The bride learned something too. That control dressed as confidence eventually collapses. That respect cannot be staged. And that people remember how you place them when you think no one is watching. As for me, I learned the most important lesson of all. I am not generous because I am afraid of conflict. I am generous because I choose to be. And choice, real choice, only exists when you're willing to withdraw it. Today, I still give. I still celebrate. I still show up. But I do so as a full person, not a background detail. I take my seat at the table or I don't attend the event. It's that simple. If I could speak to every woman who has ever been told to just go along, to every mother who has paid quietly and smiled politely while shrinking, I would tell her this. You are not dramatic for noticing where they put you. You are not difficult for refusing to disappear. And you are never wrong for reclaiming your place in the room. The kitchen chair is still there, somewhere. Folded. Waiting. It will never have my name on it again. Because I didn't just pay for a wedding. I paid for a lesson. And I intend to keep it.